The Marsh family had gathered in the sterile conference room of Darby, Winters and Associates, a law firm specializing in elder care and estate planning. "Mom, Dad," Richard began, "we've been discussing your situation extensively, and we've come to a decision." Camilla reached for Victor's hand under the table. At 78 and 79 respectively, they had begun moving a little slower, forgetting small things, nothing unusual for their age, nothing that prevented them from living independently in the home they'd paid off 20 years ago. Diana cut in. "You've become a liability. The house needs repairs you can't manage. Mom, your arthritis is clearly getting worse. We've consulted with specialists." "Specialists who've never met us," Victor said. Peter wouldn't meet their eyes. "It's for your own good. We've found an excellent assisted living facility." Camilla's voice trembled. "But our home, we've sold it," Richard announced. "The closing is next Friday. The proceeds will cover your care for approximately 7 years, after which your Social Security and pension should suffice." Camilla's breathing quickened, tears forming despite her determination to maintain dignity. Victor sat absolutely still, the only movement the slight flex of muscle along his jawline. "You had no right," he finally said. "We have every right," Diana countered. "Remember when you both had that terrible flu last year? You signed healthcare proxies and power of attorney forms. Given your declining condition—" "What declining condition?" Camilla's voice rose. "I still volunteer at the library twice a week. Your father still drives perfectly well. We pay our bills, we keep our appointments." "Mom," Peter interrupted, "you forgot my birthday last month." I sent a card. It might have been a few days late, 3 weeks late," Peter corrected. "And Dad couldn't remember my wife's name at Christmas dinner." "Jennifer," Victor said. "Her name is Jennifer, and I was momentarily distracted because you were criticizing our gift to your son. This isn't productive. The decision's been made. You'll be moved into assisted care Monday. The movers will handle everything. You're allowed personal effects that fit in a standard-sized room. The rest will be sold or donated." Coda, who had been lying quietly at Camilla's feet, suddenly stood and growled, his aging body tense with protective instinct. The low rumble was directed at Richard, who flinched visibly. "Control that dog," Diana snapped. "This is exactly why pets aren't allowed at Silver Pines." Camilla gasped. "What about Coda? He's family. We've found a rescue group willing to take him, given his age. They specialize in senior dogs." Victor stood abruptly. "No, this meeting is over. Come, Camilla." "Coda." His voice betrayed no emotion, but his hand shook slightly as he helped his wife to her feet. "Dad," Richard called as they reached the door, "don't make this harder than it needs to be. If we have to involve the courts—" Victor turned. "I fought in 2 wars. I buried my parents and my brother. I worked 47 years without complaint. If you think I will surrender my dignity, my independence, or my dog without a fight, then you never knew me at all." The drive home passed in devastating silence. Camilla wept quietly. Victor navigated the familiar streets mechanically, his mind racing through options, finding none. Coda sat vigilantly in the back seat, as if understanding the gravity of what had transpired. Their modest 2-story colonial came into view, the home where Diana had taken her first steps, where Richard had built science projects on the kitchen table, where Peter had practiced piano in the evenings. "I can't bear to pack it all up," Camilla whispered. "All these years, all these memories." "Camilla," he called, opening the bottom drawer where they kept important papers. "Do you remember that envelope? The one Dominic sent before he died?" Camilla appeared in the doorway. "Dominic Calderon? Your army friend?" That was. Goodness. 15 years ago at least. Victor rummaged through folders until he found it, a thick manila envelope sealed with wax, bearing the elaborate C of the Calderon family crest. He had never opened it and had nearly forgotten its existence. Dominic had been a complicated man, born to wealth but choosing to serve. They'd saved each other's lives in Korea, lost touch, reconnected briefly in the late 1990s. Then the enigmatic letter arrived shortly before news of Dominic's death. "He said not to open it unless I was ever truly desperate," Victor murmured, breaking the seal. Inside was a deed and a letter, yellowed with age. Victor unfolded the paper with trembling fingers and began to read aloud. Victor, old friend, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and you've found yourself in dire straits. I've watched the world change, watched how it discards its elders, its veterans, its history. I pray this never happens to you, but if it does, I offer one last gift. The enclosed deed is to Calderon House, my family's ancestral home in the mountains. It's been empty for decades. The place has secrets, some beautiful, some dark, but it's yours now. No one can take it from you. The Calderons always pay their debts, and I owe you my life twice over. Find warmth in the cold, old friend. Dominic. Victor looked at Camilla, a spark igniting in eyes that had been dull with defeat just moments before. We have one place left they can't take, Northridge. Mountains. Victor, that's nearly 3 hours north in the wilderness. The winter storms up there are fierce, Victor finished, and exactly what we need between us and them. Coda thrives in snow, and you and I grew up in colder climates than this. They think we're infirm, helpless. We'll show them what the generation that survived rationing and war is made of. For the first time since the devastating meeting, Camilla smiled, a small, tentative curve of her lips. Victor Marsh, are you suggesting we run away from home? I'm suggesting we find a new one that's truly ours. We have 3 days before they return. 3 days to salvage what matters most and disappear. The next 72 hours passed in carefully orchestrated secrecy. Victor withdrew their modest savings in cash, not enough to live luxuriously, but enough to sustain them while they assessed their new situation. Camilla sorted through 5 decades of possessions with quiet efficiency, selecting photo albums, her painting supplies, essential clothing, Coda's belongings, and the small treasures that carried their richest memories. As the sun crested the horizon, casting long shadows across their soon-to-be former home, Camilla stood in the doorway one last time. She touched the walls gently, a silent farewell to the house that had sheltered their family through joy and hardship. "They'll be furious," she whispered. "Let them be. They made their choice when they decided we were burdens rather than parents. I never thought I'd be estranged from my own children at the end of my life," Camilla said. "This isn't the end, Camilla. It's a beginning we didn't expect." Coda trotted up beside them, his leash in his mouth, tail wagging as if sensing adventure. Camilla laughed softly, scratching behind his ears. "At least one child still wants to be with us." They left no note. There was nothing left to say that hadn't already been said in that cold conference room. Instead, they simply locked the door, placed the key under the mat, and drove away from the life that had been stolen from them toward an uncertain future in the mountains. The journey north was arduous. As they climbed in elevation, the scattered snow flurries of the lowlands gave way to serious accumulation. By early afternoon, the 2-lane mountain road had narrowed to a single plowed track winding through dense forest. Their cell phone signal vanished, the GPS stuttered and died, and they navigated by the old paper map Dominic had included with the deed. Coda suddenly barked sharply from the back seat, lunging toward the passenger window. Camilla startled, then squinted through the swirling snow. "There!" she cried, pointing to a nearly hidden break in the trees. After what seemed an eternity, the trees suddenly gave way to a circular clearing, and there it stood, Calderon House. In the fading light, the massive Gothic structure loomed against the stormy sky like something from another century. "Oh, Victor," Camilla breathed. "It's like something from a novel." Victor parked the car and cut the engine, the sudden silence amplifying the moan of wind through the eaves. Before them stood a pair of imposing wrought iron gates, twisted into elaborate designs that featured the same stylized C from Dominic's wax seal. "Wait here," Victor said, zipping his coat and pulling on gloves before stepping out into knee-deep snow. The bitter cold stung his face as he waded toward the gates, expecting to find them chained shut. Instead, when he placed his hand on the frozen metal, The right gate swung inward with a low bang, resonant creak that seemed to echo across the clearing. Victor stood motionless, snowflakes catching in his silver hair, an inexplicable sensation washing over him, not fear, but recognition, as if the house had been waiting. He returned to the car and drove carefully through the gates and up a curved driveway to the front entrance. Massive double doors of ancient oak banded with decorative ironwork. "It's open," he told Camilla as he helped her from the car. "The gates, I mean. Almost like they were expecting us. Perhaps Dominic arranged for caretakers? But the undisturbed snow surrounding the mansion told a different story. No one had been here for a very long time. Coda leapt from the car and bounded ahead through the drifts, showing surprising energy for a dog of his years. He reached the front steps and looked back expectantly, his tail waving like a flag. "At least someone's enthusiastic," Camilla said. Smiling, Victor wrapped his arm securely around her waist, supporting her as they trudged through the snow to join Coda. The massive front door stood before them, a brass knocker shaped like a lion's head centered on the right panel. Victor reached for it, then hesitated, suddenly overcome with the strange feeling that once they entered, their lives would be irrevocably altered. "We don't have to do this," he said softly to Camilla. "We could find a motel in the nearest town, figure out another plan. And go where, Victor? Do what? This is our chance. Perhaps our last one. I'd rather face whatever's waiting in there than surrender to our children's plans for us." Together, they lifted the knocker and let it fall. The sound resonated not just against the door, but seemingly through the entire structure, as if awakening something long dormant. They stepped across the threshold into darkness, the beam of Victor's flashlight cutting through layers of dust and shadow. The foyer stretched before them, a grand entrance hall with a sweeping staircase rising to the second floor. Cobwebs draped from a massive crystal chandelier overhead. The air inside was cold, but noticeably warmer than the howling storm outside, and there was something else, something unexpected. "Do you smell that?" Camilla whispered. Victor nodded slowly, directing his flashlight toward the rear of the hall, where a wide archway led to what appeared to be a great room. Wood smoke. Coda trotted ahead confidently, his nails clicking against the marble floor beneath the dust. He disappeared through the archway, and a moment later they heard his welcoming bark. Following the sound, Victor and Camilla entered a vast room dominated by a stone fireplace large enough to stand in. And there, in the massive hearth, glowed the faintest embers of what must have been a recent fire, small but unmistakably real, casting a tiny circle of warmth into the frozen mansion. Camilla turned to Victor. "Victor, someone's been here." The first night in Calderon House was a lesson in survival and adaptation. After bringing in their most essential belongings from the car, Victor focused on coaxing the dying embers in the great room fireplace back to life. Someone had indeed been here recently, but who, and for what purpose, remained a mystery. "Look at this," Camilla called from where she examined a stack of firewood neatly piled beside the hearth. "This wood is dry, recently cut." She held up a piece, showing the clean, fresh edges of the split oak. Perhaps caretakers after all, though the place hardly looks maintained. "Or other people seeking shelter?" Camilla suggested, glancing nervously toward the darkened windows where snowflakes swirled visibly in the flashlight beam. Coda, however, displayed none of their uncertainty. The German Shepherd moved through the great room and adjoining spaces with purpose, sniffing corners, pawing at certain doors while ignoring others. His behavior was peculiar, almost as if he knew the layout already. As the fire finally caught and began to grow, its light revealed a room that had once been magnificent. Beneath the dust and cobwebs lay fine craftsmanship, hand-carved paneling, a coffered ceiling with detailed medallions, and walls lined with empty bookshelves interrupted by tall windows draped in tattered velvet. "It's not all in bad shape," Victor observed, running his hand along a sturdy side table. "The roof must be intact in this part of the house. No water damage." Camilla nodded. "It's as if this room was preserved, somehow. Protected." With the fire now casting a warm glow and pushing back the most bitter cold, they decided to explore the ground floor with flashlights. Coda led the way, moving confidently through the darkness as if following a familiar path. The kitchen they discovered was enormous, clearly designed for a staff of servants rather than a single cook. Ancient copper pots hung from ceiling racks, and a massive iron stove dominated one wall. "We'll need to boil water for safety," Camilla noted. "But at least we have running water." A pantry adjoining the kitchen held more surprises. Shelves stocked with canned goods and preserves, their labels faded but still readable, dating back decades. Victor examined several cans, shaking his head in disbelief. "Some of these might still be good," he said. "Military-grade provisions. Dominic's doing, I'd wager." They continued their exploration, finding a formal dining room with a table that could seat 20, a study with empty bookshelves and a dust-covered desk, and a music room containing a grand piano, its lid closed as if awaiting a performer's return. Throughout their explorations, certain rooms seemed more accessible than others. Some doors were swollen shut with age and humidity, while others opened easily. "It's almost as if he knows," Camilla whispered as they followed the dog up the sweeping main staircase to the skier. Second floor. The upper level was a warren of bedrooms and sitting rooms, most in various states of disrepair. Water damage was evident in several spaces where the roof had leaked, creating dangerous soft spots in the flooring. Finally, at the end of the east wing, the German Shepherd stopped before a closed door. When Victor pushed it open, they discovered a master bedroom suite in remarkable condition. "This is where we'll sleep," Victor decided, directing his flashlight around the space. "It seems safe and dry." Camilla moved to the window and carefully pulled back the drape. Outside, the snowstorm had intensified, blanketing the world in white. "We're truly isolated," she said softly. "No one would think to look for us here." "That's rather the point, isn't it?" Victor replied, "though I admit I hadn't expected quite such. Gothic accommodations." Camilla's laugh was warm despite her obvious fatigue. "It's like living in one of those novels I used to read. Let's hope our story has a happier ending than most of those Gothic tales." They made the bedroom habitable, shaking out the heavy bedding and sweeping decades of dust from the floor. Victor built a small fire in the bedroom hearth, and they brought up their sleeping bags to layer on top of the ancient mattress. Coda settled at the foot of the bed, his vigilant presence reassuring in the unfamiliar surroundings. As they prepared for sleep, Camilla suddenly gasped, pointing to something on the wall opposite the bed. "Victor, look at that painting!" In the flickering firelight, a large portrait emerged from the shadows, a man in his 30s, dressed in the formal style of the 1952, holding a child of perhaps 3 or 4 years. The man's face was half-turned toward the light, his expression solemn yet kind. "My God," Victor whispered. "He looks like he could be me, a younger version of me." "Dominic?" Camilla guessed, studying the painting. "You said you met in Korea. This would be the right era." "Must be. Though I never knew he had a child. He never mentioned family at all, beyond vague references to complicated business." Camilla yawned suddenly. "Tomorrow," she said, patting Victor's hand. "We'll solve the mysteries tomorrow. For now, we've found shelter, and that's enough." As they settled into bed, the ancient mansion creaked and sighed around them, adjusting to the presence of life within its walls once more. Victor lay awake long after Camilla's breathing had deepened into sleep. Just as he was finally drifting off, he could have sworn he heard, very faintly, the delicate notes of a piano from somewhere far below. He dismissed it as a dream already beginning, but Coda's ears perked up, the dog lifting his head to listen before settling back down with a contented sigh. Their first morning in Calderon House brought new challenges. Camilla woke up coughing violently, the dust and cold air aggravating her COPD. Victor helped her sit up, concern etched on his weathered face. "Where's your inhaler?" he asked. "Left it in the car." "Didn't think." Victor hurried downstairs and out into the bitter morning cold. The storm had passed, leaving behind a crystalline world of white. The station wagon was nearly buried, and it took him precious minutes to dig out the door and retrieve Camilla's medication bag from the back seat. When he returned, breathless from exertion and worry, Camilla was sitting up but still struggling. Her lips had taken on a faint bluish tinge that terrified him. "We need your oxygen," he said, administering the inhaler. "The portable tank's still in the car." "Basement," Camilla wheezed. "What?" Victor frowned, not understanding. Camilla gestured for Coda. "Show him," she whispered to the dog. The German shepherd led him downstairs and through a series of corridors to a door he and Camilla hadn't explored the night before. It opened to reveal a set of narrow stairs descending into darkness. Victor hesitated, then followed Coda down into a basement that smelled of earth and old stone. His flashlight revealed a surprisingly organized space, not a cellar for wine or food storage, but what appeared to be a fallout shelter of sorts. Metal shelving lined the walls, stocked with supplies, canned food, bottled water, first aid kits, blankets, and, incredibly, medical equipment, including an oxygen tank from the 1960 seconds. "How did she know?" Victor muttered. Coda whined softly, nosing at a metal cabinet nearby. When Victor opened it, he found more medical supplies, antibiotics, painkillers, and various medications, all military-grade and most still within their expiration dates, suggesting they'd been replenished sometime in the past decade. Victor gathered what he needed and hurried back upstairs. Camilla's breathing had worsened, and he quickly set up the oxygen tank, fitting the mask over her face. "How did you know?" Victor asked when she was finally able to remove the mask. "I didn't. Not exactly. It was more like a memory, but not my own. Does that make sense? I saw the basement in my mind, saw the supplies there. This place," he said slowly. "There's something unusual about it. Dominic said it had secrets. Perhaps it's looking after us," she said softly. "The house, I mean. Perhaps it knows we need help." Victor wasn't a fanciful man. Decades of practical work and military service had grounded him firmly in reality, yet he couldn't dismiss the strange coincidences accumulating around them. The freshly cut firewood, the embers still warm in the hearth upon their arrival, the well-preserved bedroom where Dominic's portrait hung, the fully stocked medical cabinet with precisely what Camilla needed. "We should rest today," he said finally. "Get you stronger before we explore further. I'll bring up more firewood. See if I can get the kitchen stove working for hot meals. I'll be fine, Victor. This isn't my first dance with breathing troubles." He pressed a kiss to her forehead. "It had better not be your last either. I didn't bring you to this frozen mansion to lose you, Camilla Marsh." She smiled. "You won't lose me. We have too much living left to do." The day passed quietly as Victor worked to make their new accommodation more habitable. He found tools in the basement, an axe, saws, hammers, and set about making minor repairs to the bedroom and great room. The kitchen stove, an enormous cast-iron behemoth, cleaned up well and still functioned. By afternoon, he had a pot of soup simmering, made from canned vegetables and dried beef from the well-stocked pantry. Camilla rested, her breathing gradually improving with the oxygen and medication. By evening, she felt strong enough to move downstairs to the great room, where Victor had built a roaring fire in the massive hearth. "It's beautiful," she said, settling into a high-backed chair drawn close to the fire. Underneath all the dust and neglect, this place was once magnificent. Victor nodded, serving her soup in a bowl. "It still could be. The bones are good. Some of the damage is superficial." "Victor Marsh, are you actually thinking about renovating this place?" "Got to keep busy somehow. Besides, what else do we have to do?" Our social calendar suddenly opened up. The joke, dark as it was, made Camilla laugh. "What do you think they did when they found us gone?" "Called the police, probably. Filed missing persons reports. But they won't find us here. This property isn't in our name. It's in Dominic's, transferred to me privately. There's no paper trail they can follow." "They'll be frantic," Camilla said, her voice tinged with a mother's concern. "Let them be," Victor replied. "They weren't concerned with our feelings when they decided to discard us like worn-out furniture. They fell silent. The only sounds the crackling fire and Coda's soft snoring where he lay stretched before the hearth." Camilla broke the silence. "I want to explore the library tomorrow, if I'm feeling stronger. I noticed it when we first arrived, through that door to the right of the entrance hall. Books might tell us more about the Calderones. about this place. I want to check the rest of the house, see what's salvageable, and I should bring in the rest of our things from the car before another storm hits." They retired early, both exhausted from the dramatic changes in their lives. As they settled into the ancient bed, wrapped in their modern sleeping bags, Camilla reached for Victor's hand in the darkness. "I should be terrified," she whispered. "We're alone in a half-ruined mansion in the wilderness, cut off from everything familiar. Yet somehow I feel protected." Dominic always did look out for his friends. Maybe he's still doing it in his way. That night, they both heard the piano. Distant notes played softly, a melancholy tune that floated up through the floorboards like a memory. They didn't speak of it, each believing the other was asleep, each wondering if it was a dream. The next few days fell into a pattern as they settled into their new home. Each morning, Victor checked the perimeter of the mansion, clearing paths through the snow, bringing in more firewood, and making small repairs. Camilla, her strength returning, devoted herself to cleaning the rooms they used most, dusting, sweeping, washing ancient linens found in a cedar chest. The library became her project. Behind the heavy oak door she'd noticed on their arrival, she discovered a magnificent room, lined floor to ceiling with bookshelves. Unlike the empty shelves in the study, these were filled with volumes, thousands of books, ranging from leather-bound classics to more modern works, the newest dating to the early 2000s. "Someone maintained this collection," she told Victor. "These books have been protected from dampness, arranged by subject. Look, history here, literature there, science along that wall." Dominic was a scholar at heart. He read constantly during quiet moments in Korea. Always had a book in his pack, even on the most grueling marches. The library held another surprise, a desk drawer filled with art supplies, pencils, charcoal, watercolors, and sketchbooks, all neatly arranged and in good condition. "These can't be from Dominic's time," Camilla said, holding up a set of brushes still soft and pliable. The mystery deepened when, on their 5th day at Calderon House, they discovered a room they had previously overlooked, or perhaps, as Camilla suggested, that the house had only now decided to reveal to them. Coda led the discovery, scratching insistently at what appeared to be a panel of decorative wainscoting in the library. When Victor pressed on it, following the dog's cues, the panel swung inward to reveal a small but exquisite room, clearly a lady's sitting room or boudoir. Unlike the rest of the house, this room showed signs of recent use. "Someone's been living here," Victor said, his voice tight with concern. "Recently." Camilla moved to a writing desk where papers were scattered, examining them carefully. "Love letters," she said, her expression softening. "Dozens of them, spanning years. From someone named Antonio to a woman called Maria." Victor joined her. "The most recent is from just 6 months ago. But look at the earliest ones. They're from 1962, a 60-year correspondence?" Camilla marveled, handling the delicate papers with care. "That's even longer than we've been married." They read several of the letters together, piecing together a story of long-separated lovers. Antonio, it seemed, had been a young man from a rival family who fell in love with Maria Calderon in the early 1962s. Their families' business rivalries, described in careful euphemisms that Victor recognized as references to organized crime, had kept them apart, yet somehow they had maintained a secret correspondence for decades, meeting rarely but never losing their connection. "The last letter mentions a reunion," Camilla said. "After all those years apart, they were finally going to be together. He was coming to meet her here 6 months ago." Victor checked the room again, noting details he'd missed. Men's gloves on a side table, a heavier coat hanging behind the door alongside the woman's shawl. "I think they did reunite," he said softly. "I think they were here together, recently. The firewood, the embers still warm when we arrived. It was them. Then where are they now?" Their unease deepened that night when Camilla woke to find a music box playing softly on the dresser, a music box she was certain hadn't been there when they went to sleep. Victor lit a lamp and approached it cautiously. The delicate melody filled the room as a tiny ballerina twirled inside the open lid. Tucked beside the music box was a faded photograph, a formal portrait of Dominic Calderone in his army uniform, standing beside a German shepherd that looked remarkably like Coda. "This is impossible," Victor whispered, examining the photo. "This dog, the markings are identical to Coda's. Even that white patch on the chest, shaped like a crescent. Victor, what kind of house have we come to?" Before he could answer, Coda suddenly sprang from his place at the foot of the bed, barking sharply toward the bedroom door. Victor grabbed the flashlight and followed as the dog bounded into the hallway and down the main staircase. At the front door, Coda continued barking, his posture alert rather than aggressive. Victor cautiously opened the door a crack, peering out into the moonlit night. Fresh snow had fallen, creating a pristine blanket across the landscape, except for a single set of footprints leading up to the porch. And there, huddled against the bitter cold, stood a teenage girl. The girl couldn't have been more than 17. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, her thin frame swallowed by a coat several sizes too large. When Victor opened the door fully, she didn't flinch or back away. Instead, she regarded him with wary assessment, chin lifted slightly in a gesture of defiance belied by the trembling of her blue-tinged lips. "Are you the new owners?" she asked. Victor hesitated. "In a manner of speaking, who are you, Mara?" she replied simply, then glanced down at Coda, who had stopped barking and now stood calmly beside Victor. "I see you met the Guardian." "Guardian?" Victor repeated. "That's what Maria called him, the dog who watches the house. He's always here, even when people aren't." Camilla appeared behind Victor, wrapping her cardigan tightly around her nightgown. "Victor? Who's there?" Her eyes widened when she saw the girl. "Good heavens, child, you must be freezing. Come in at once." Despite Victor's cautionary glance, Camilla ushered the girl inside and toward the great room where embers still glowed in the hearth. Victor followed, his posture wary but not threatening. Mara stood with her back to the fire, warming her hands while her eyes darted around the room, taking inventory of the changes Victor and Camilla had made. "You've been cleaning," she observed. "You know this place well?" Victor asked. "I've been staying in the groundskeeper's cottage about a mile through the woods. It's small but solid. I saw your lights a few nights ago. I figured I should check who moved in. Alone? In this wilderness?" Camilla's maternal concern was evident. "Where are your parents, dear?" Something shuddered in Mara's expression. "Not in the picture. I've been on my own a while." "You knew Maria?" Victor asked, recalling the name from the letters. "And Antonio? They let me stay in the cottage. Said I could be useful, keep an eye on things. I did odd jobs, chopped wood. Maria taught me to paint." She hesitated, then added softly, "They were good people." "Were?" "They died 3 months ago. Car accident on the mountain road during the first snow. They'd gone into town for supplies." Her voice trailed off. A heavy silence filled the room, broken only by the occasional pop of the fire. Victor and Camilla exchanged glances, communicating without words as long-married couples often do. "Have you been alone all this time?" Camilla finally asked. "I'm used to it. You must be hungry," Camilla said. "When did you last have a proper meal?" "I hunt, fish when the stream isn't frozen. Maria's pantry had supplies." "Sit," Camilla commanded. "I'm going to make you something to eat, and then we'll talk more." Victor watched his wife bustle toward the kitchen, then turned back to find Mara studying him intently. "You look like him," she said abruptly. "The man in the painting. Dominic." "So I've been told," Victor replied. "Did you know him too?" "Before my time. Maria talked about him sometimes, said he was family. A great uncle or something. She said the house was waiting for someone worthy of it." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Are you worthy, do you think?" "I don't know," he answered honestly. "We came here because we had nowhere else to go." "Our children," he stopped, surprised by the emotion that suddenly threatened to overwhelm him. "Families can be the worst betrayers." "That's what Antonio always said. You seem very wise for someone so young," Victor observed. "Necessity." When Camilla returned with a tray bearing soup and freshly baked bread, skills she'd honed over decades of homemaking now put to use with the mansion's well-stocked pantry. Where were you planning to go? Camilla asked gently when the girl had finished eating. Surely you weren't going to stay alone in that cottage all winter? Why not? Mara countered. Because you're a child, Victor said. Something flashed in Mara's eyes. Defiance, fear, and beneath it all, a desperate loneliness she couldn't quite conceal. I'm not your problem. You're not a problem at all. You're a young woman who's been dealt a difficult hand, just as we have. Perhaps we could help each other. How? Stay here, Camilla suggested. The mansion has plenty of room. You know it better than we do. You could help us restore it. In return, you'd have shelter, food, and company. Why would you do that? Mara asked. Victor leaned forward. Because when you've been thrown away by those who should have cared for you the most, you recognize the same wound in others. The girl looked away quickly, but not before they saw the glimmer of tears she refused to shed. Coda chose that moment to approach, resting his graying muzzle on Mara's knee. She placed her hand on his head with the familiarity of an old friend. He remembers you, Camilla observed. He remembers everyone, Mara replied. I could show you the parts of the house that need the most attention. There's a leak in the west wing that's causing damage to the floor below. That would be very helpful, she said simply. Now, let me show you to a bedroom. You must be exhausted. That night, with Mara settled in a room down the hall, and Coda curled protectively outside her door, Victor and Camilla spoke in hushed tones. She's been abandoned, Camilla whispered, but she's just a child. Camilla, we don't know her story. Don't know if there are people looking for her. There aren't, Camilla said. I recognize the look. She's been alone a long time. She reached for Victor's hand in the darkness. We can help her, Victor, and perhaps she was sent to help us too. By whom? Victor asked. By the house, Camilla replied, her voice drifting towards sleep. Victor lay awake long after his wife's breathing deepened, pondering the strange circumstances that had brought them to this place and now had delivered this wounded, wary girl to their door. Mara became their reluctant guide to Calderon House's secrets. The next morning, she led them through areas they hadn't yet explored, pointing out structural issues with the detached expertise of someone who had learned to assess threats and opportunities in any environment. This floor is reverdying sound, she explained. But that section there, see how it's darker? Water damage. Don't trust it. With Mara's knowledge and Victor's practical skills, they began to map out a restoration plan, focusing first on making more of the house habitable and weatherproof. The girl remained guarded, keeping conversation to practical matters and disappearing for hours each day to check on her cottage or walk the grounds with Coda, who had clearly adopted her as his second charge. Yet gradually, almost imperceptibly, she began to thaw, lingering a little longer at meals, occasionally asking Camilla about her life before the mansion, watching Victor's repair work with poorly disguised interest. A breakthrough came on their fourth day together. Camilla had set up a painting area in the library, using the supplies they'd discovered. When Mara entered and saw the half-finished watercolor of the mansion in winter, she stopped abruptly. "You're using Maria's paints," she said. Camilla set down her brush. "I'm sorry, I didn't realize they were special to you. I can put them away." "No, she would have liked that they're being used. She always said art shouldn't sit idle." She studied Camilla's painting with a critical eye. "Your perspective is good, but you're being too careful with the shadows. The mansion isn't delicate, it's powerful, even in decay." Camilla smiled. "Show me?" After a moment's hesitation, Mara took the brush. With confident strokes, she deepened the shadows beneath the eaves, added texture to the weathered stone, and brought a sense of brooding life to the structure. "There," she said, "it's watching you, not just being watched. You have a gift. Did Maria teach you?" "Some," Mara admitted, "but I was drawing before I met her. It was an escape when things were bad. Art saved me too," Camilla said softly. "When my first baby died, a stillbirth, before my 3 living children, painting was the only thing that kept me from drowning in grief." Mara looked at her sharply, perhaps surprised by the personal revelation, perhaps by the discovery of a shared experience of loss, albeit different in nature. As January deepened, the mansion began to change under their collective care. Victor repaired windows, sealed drafts, and got a second fireplace working in the library. Camilla organized and cleaned, transforming cluttered spaces into comfortable ones. Mara, gradually shedding some of her wariness, revealed an unexpected eye for detail and beauty, arranging found objects into striking displays. They fell into routines that began to feel like normalcy. Mornings were for practical work, repairs, cleaning, cooking. Afternoons often found Camilla painting while Victor read books from the library collection. Mara would sometimes join them, sketching quietly or helping Victor with a particularly challenging repair. Evenings were for shared meals and conversation that grew increasingly comfortable, occasionally even touching on the wounds that had brought each of them to this sanctuary. The mansion revealed its secrets gradually, as if testing their worthiness. A hidden door behind a bookshelf in the library led to a small observatory at the top of the tower, where a telescope still stood aimed at the stars. A concealed panel in the music room contained sheet music handwritten by generations of Calderons. The basement, beyond the area where they'd found the medical supplies, housed a wine cellar with bottles dating back to the 1922. One particularly bitter afternoon, when snow had confined them indoors for 3 days straight, Coda grew suddenly alert while they were gathered in the library. The German shepherd trotted to the bookshelves, pawing insistently at a particular section. "He's found something," Mara said. Victor ran his hands along the shelf where Coda indicated, feeling for irregularities. When he pressed a particular carved rosette, they heard a distinct click. A section of bookcase swung inward, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. Armed with flashlights, the three humans and Coda ventured down the hidden stairs. They emerged into a large, windowless room that appeared to be a combination of bunker and archive. Metal filing cabinets lined one wall. A large table dominated the center, surrounded by chairs. One corner held weapons, rifles, shotguns, even what appeared to be military-grade equipment, all meticulously maintained under gun oil and protective coverings. "What is this place?" Camilla whispered, her flashlight beam picking out details, maps on the walls, communication equipment from various eras, a film projector set up at one end of the table. Dominic's war room. Victor guessed, examining a filing cabinet filled with folders labeled by year, stretching from the 1942 to the early 2000s. The Calderons were involved in complicated business, as he always put it. I never asked for details. Mara moved to a metal trunk tucked against the far wall. "Look at this," she called, lifting out what appeared to be old film reels in protective canisters. One was labeled prominently, "To the one who stayed loyal." Victor's breath caught. That would be me. Dominic always said I was the only person who never betrayed him, who never wanted anything from him. With trembling hands, he took the film canister. The projector on the table was already set up, as if waiting. After several minutes of figuring out how to thread the film properly, a skill Victor remembered from his army days, they dimmed their flashlights and started the projection. The white wall at the end of the room came alive with images. Dominic Calderon, older than in the painting but still vital, sat behind a desk much like the one in the upstairs study. The film was dated just 3 months before his death. "Victor, old friend," the recorded Dominic began. "If you're watching this, you've found your way to Calderon House, and the house has deemed you worthy of its secrets." Camilla gasped softly, her hand finding Victor's in the darkness. "We met as young men in a war neither of us fully understood," Dominic continued. "You saved my life twice over, once from enemy fire, once from my own demons when I returned stateside. You never asked questions about my family's business, never judged, never sought advantage. In a life where loyalty was rare and often purchased rather than freely given, yours was the genuine article." The image shifted, showing photos of younger versions of Victor and Dominic in uniform, arms around each other's shoulders, cigarettes dangling from tired smiles. "After the war, our paths diverged. My family expected me to take my place in the organization, what outsiders would call the mafia, though we preferred family business. I did my duty, Victor. I became what was expected, made money, made enemies, lost parts of my soul. Dominic's expression on screen grew somber. We had a falling out, you and I, in the late 70 seconds. Do you remember? You disapproved when I wouldn't leave life, wouldn't turn state's evidence when the feds came calling. You said I was better than my family's legacy. You were right, but I was trapped by obligation, by fear, by blood. Victor nodded unconsciously, the memory of that argument still vivid decades later. What you never knew was that I had a son. Dominic revealed, and the camera panned to the portrait they'd found in the bedroom, younger Dominic holding a small boy. His mother was not from our world. She wanted no part of the Calderon legacy for our child. I respected that, gave them a new identity, supported them from afar, visited in secret when I could. Dominic leaned toward the camera, his dark eyes intense. I tell you this now because blood isn't what matters most, Victor. It's a choice. It's loyalty. It's who stays when the world turns cold. The film continued, detailing how Dominic had gradually extricated himself from the family business, transitioning to legitimate enterprises while maintaining the fortified sanctuary of Calderon House, a place of safety for those worthy of protection, as he put it. I leave this house to you, Victor, because you understand what matters. Not wealth, not power, but warmth in a cold world, protection for the vulnerable, second chances. As the film neared its end, Dominic's expression softened. If you're watching this, old friend, it means you needed sanctuary. I hope the house provides it. It has stood for generations, witnessed both horrors and beauties, sheltered both sinners and saints. It responds to worthiness, not wealth, to kindness, not cruelty. That's why the deed is structured as it is. The property can never be sold, only passed to someone deemed worthy by the current keeper. His final words lingered long after the film flickered to its conclusion. Find warmth in the cold, Victor. And when you do, share it with others who have been left in winter. The three sat in silence as the projector's bulb continued to illuminate the empty screen. Finally, Mara spoke. Maria was his granddaughter. That's why she knew about this place, why she and Antonio came here when they finally could be together. Victor nodded slowly, and she recognized something in you, just as Dominic saw something in me, the worthy ones. Camilla wiped tears. He built all this, maintained it for decades, just in case you ever needed it. No, Victor corrected gently. He maintained it for anyone who needed sanctuary and deserved it. We're just the current keepers. As they ascended the hidden staircase back to the library, a peculiar peace settled over them, the sensation of pieces falling into place, of stories connecting across decades. The mansion creaked around them, but it no longer sounded like the protest of neglected timber. Now it seemed more like acknowledgement. The fragile peace they had established was shattered 3 days later. Victor was in the basement organizing supplies when Coda's bark, sharp, alarmed, echoed from above. He hurried upstairs to find Camilla at the front window, her face pale. "A car," she said, pointing to the distant gates where a black SUV had parked. "Victor, it's them, our children." "How did they find us?" "Mail forwarding," Camilla whispered. "Remember the deed confirmation that came just before we left? I had it forwarded to my sister's address so it wouldn't be lost in the move. They must have convinced her to tell them." Victor watched as 3 figures emerged from the vehicle. Richard, Diana, and Peter, bundled against the cold, trudging through the snow toward the mansion. His first instinct was to bar the doors, to protect their sanctuary from invasion. Instead, he straightened his shoulders and nodded to Camilla. "Let them come," he said quietly. "This is our home now. We have nothing to hide, nothing to be ashamed of." Mara appeared beside them. "Should I stay out of sight?" "No, dear. You're part of this household now, but perhaps wait in the library until we've spoken with them." Mara nodded, retreating through the arched doorway with Coda following protectively at her heels. The knock when it came was sharp, authoritative. Richard's knock. Victor opened the door with deliberate calm, revealing his 3 children on the portico, their expressions a mixture of relief, anger, and confusion. "Dad," Richard began, "you made us worried sick. We've had search parties out looking for you." "How kind of you to be concerned," Victor replied, "considering you were planning to discard us." Diana pushed forward. "This isn't a joke, Dad. Mom needs proper care. You can't just run off to—" She broke off, taking in the mansion behind him for the first time, her professional assessment visible in her narrowed gaze. "What is this place? How did you even find it?" "It was left to me by an old friend," Victor explained. "It's our home now." Peter, always the most emotionally transparent of the three, looked genuinely distressed. "Mom, are you okay? We were worried you'd frozen to death somewhere, or worse." Camilla stepped into view. "As you can see, I'm perfectly fine. Better than fine, actually. Here, I can breathe." "You can't seriously be planning to stay in this mausoleum," Diana protested. "It's the middle of nowhere, and you both need regular medical supervision. May we at least come in?" Richard asked. Victor hesitated, then stepped aside. "You may enter, but understand this, you are guests here, not authorities." The three siblings filed into the entrance hall, their expressions shifting as they took in the grandeur of Calderon House. "This property must be worth millions," Richard murmured, his financial advisor's mind automatically calculating. Victor's expression hardened. "The house isn't for sale. It can't be sold. That's written into the deed. It can only be passed on to someone worthy." "Worthy? What does that even mean? And who decides?" "The house decides," Camilla said. "Please, sit down. Would you like some tea? I just made fresh bread this morning." Her normalcy, her evident comfort in these surroundings, seemed to discomfit her children more than Victor's coldness. They perched awkwardly on the edge of antique furniture, glancing around as if expecting the ceiling to collapse at any moment. "Mom, Dad," Peter finally said, "we know you're upset about the arrangements we made. Maybe we should have consulted you more. But this isn't a solution. This house is isolated, probably structurally unsound. It's perfectly sound in the areas we use," Victor interrupted. "That's not the point," Diana snapped. "What happens when one of you has a medical emergency? The nearest hospital must be an hour away, minimum. What about when the next blizzard hits and you're completely cut off? We have supplies, a generator, and medication. The house has survived far worse than a winter storm." Richard leaned forward. "Look, we understand you were upset about Silver Pines. We can look at other facilities, ones with more independence, but this place, it's not practical. It's not safe." "What you mean," Victor said, "is that it's not under your control." A tense silence followed, broken by the sound of footsteps. Mara entered the room with Coda beside her. She carried a tray with teacups and a steaming pot, which she set carefully on the coffee table. "Who is this?" Diana asked sharply, eyeing the teenager with obvious suspicion. "This is Mara," Camilla said warmly. "She's been helping us restore the mansion. She's very knowledgeable about the property." "A random teenager? Where are her parents? How do you know she's not just taking advantage of your vulnerability?" Mara stiffened but said nothing, pouring tea with deliberate precision. "Mara is part of this household," Victor stated. Peter shook his head incredulously. "So, you've what? Adopted a stray teenager and moved into a crumbling mansion in the middle of nowhere? Can't you see how this looks? How concerning is this?" "No more concerning than children disposing of their parents because they've become inconvenient," Camilla replied. Diana stood abruptly. "This is ridiculous. You're both clearly not thinking rationally. We should contact the authorities. Have you evaluated?" "On what grounds?" Victor challenged. "We're adults of sound mind, living in a property legally deeded to me. We're not breaking any laws, not endangering ourselves or others." "You abandoned your home," Richard exclaimed. "A home you had already sold out from under us," Camilla reminded him. The argument escalated, voices rising as decades of unspoken tensions surfaced. Peter accusing them of selfishness for not considering how their actions affected the family. Diana questioned Camilla's health and capacity. Richard finally revealed their true concern, that the mansion and its property could be worth millions, a legacy they felt entitled to preserve. "This land could be worth millions," he admitted. Mara, who had been silent throughout, suddenly spoke. "You're worried about your inheritance, not your parents." Three heads swiveled toward her, expressions ranging from shock to outrage. "Stay out of this," Diana warned. "This is a family matter." "They are family," Mara replied. nodding toward Victor and Camilla. "They took me in when I had nothing. They asked for nothing in return. They're rebuilding this place with their bare hands because they see what it could be, not just what they could sell it for." Victor placed a hand on Mara's shoulder. "It's all right. They're leaving now." "We most certainly are not," Richard declared. "Then what?" Victor interrupted. "You'll have us declared incompetent? Force us into care? Steal this property too?" The confrontation might have escalated further if not for what happened next. Camilla, who had been standing quietly near the fire, suddenly gasped, her hand flying to her chest. Her teacup fell, shattering on the hearth as she stumbled forward. "Camilla!" Victor lunged to catch her as she collapsed, her face contorted in pain. "Diana, you're a doctor. Help her." Diana's professional instincts overrode the argument. She knelt beside Camilla, checking pulse and breathing. "She's having a cardiac event. We need to get her to a hospital immediately." "The storm," Peter said, looking out the window where snow had begun falling heavily again. "The roads might already be impassable." "Oxygen," Victor said urgently. "In the basement, there's an oxygen tank." "Mara, show Diana." The oxygen helped stabilize Camilla temporarily, but her condition remained grave. Diana administered emergency medication from her medical bag, while Richard attempted to call for emergency services on his satellite phone, only to learn that the nearest ambulance would take over an hour to reach them if it could navigate the increasingly treacherous roads at all. As night fell, the storm intensified, transforming from steady snowfall to a howling blizzard that rattled the windows and erased any hope of evacuation. Camilla was moved to the bedroom she shared with Victor, made as comfortable as possible with Diana monitoring her vital signs and administering what limited treatment was available. Victor sat beside the bed. Coda lay at the foot of the bed, his vigilant eyes never leaving Camilla's face. In the great room below, Richard and Peter huddled by the fire, their earlier righteous anger replaced by genuine fear for their mother, and a growing awareness of the mansion's surprising comforts. The well-stocked pantry Mara showed them, the functioning generator that provided backup power, the carefully maintained medical supplies that might now save their mother's life. Near midnight, Diana emerged from the bedroom. "She's stabilized, but it was a significant event. If we can't get her to a hospital by morning." The unfinished sentence hung in the air. Mara, who had been silently keeping the fires fed and making coffee for the exhausted family, slipped upstairs with a cup for Victor. She found him exactly as he had been for hours, holding Camilla's hand, his thumb gently stroking her wedding ring. Camilla's breathing was labored despite the oxygen, her complexion ashen. "Thank you," Victor whispered, accepting the coffee. "You should rest, Mara. There's nothing more to be done tonight. The house won't let her go easily," she said softly. "Neither will Coda." Victor glanced up, puzzled by her words, but too exhausted to question them. Mara withdrew, closing the door gently behind her. In the cold hours before dawn, when the storm was at its fiercest, Camilla briefly regained consciousness. Her eyes fluttered open, finding Victor's immediately, a lifetime of communication passing between them without words. "Victor," she whispered, her voice barely audible. He leaned closer, his ear near her lips. "Don't let them make you cold," she murmured. "Stay warm, Vic. That's how we win." Her fingers tightened briefly around his, then gradually relaxed. Outside, the wind suddenly stilled, the storm abating as quickly as it had arisen. In the new silence, Coda raised his head and howled, a long, mournful sound that echoed through the ancient halls of Calderon House. Camilla Marsh had come home to the mansion, and now she was gone. The days following Camilla's death passed in a haze for Victor. He moved through the rituals of grief like a man underwater, everything slowed, muffled, distorted. The roads cleared enough for an ambulance to reach them, but it was too late for anything but formalities. Camilla's body was taken to the nearest town, arrangements made for cremation as she had always wished. The children stayed, their original purpose forgotten in the shock of loss. They moved through the mansion like ghosts themselves, seeing it now through different eyes, not as a crumbling liability, but as the place their mother had chosen for her final days, the place where she had found a measure of peace and purpose after their betrayal. Victor barely spoke. He sat for hours in the great room, staring into the fire that Camilla had loved. The house seemed to grieve with him, the temperature dropping despite the constant fires. Mara kept the household functioning. She cooked simple meals, maintained the fires, and ensured the basic repairs Victor had begun didn't deteriorate. When Diana cautiously offered to help with cooking, or when Peter asked to assist with bringing in firewood, Mara accepted. Richard made several trips to the nearest town, arranging for Camilla's cremation and handling the necessary paperwork. When he returned from the final trip, urn in hand, he found Victor sitting in Camilla's chair in the library, an unfinished watercolor on the easel before him. Camilla's last painting, a vision of Calderon House in springtime. The frozen mansion reborn in delicate greens and soft sunlight. "Dad," Richard said, "I've brought Mom home." Victor nodded. "She knew she wouldn't see the spring," he said, his first words in days. But she could imagine it. Camilla always saw beauty before it arrived. "I'm sorry," Richard said. "We thought we were doing what was best for you both. We were wrong. She forgave you, you know, at the end." Camilla couldn't hold a grudge if her life depended on it. "And you, Dad? Can you forgive us?" "I'm working on it. Your mother's last words to me were about staying warm, not cold. She meant my heart as much as this place. We've been talking, Diana, Peter, and I. We want to help with the house, if you'll let us. Not to take over, not to change your plans, just to help. Why? Because she loved it here. Because we can see now what you saw. Potential, not decay. Because," he hesitated, then continued more softly, "because we need to make amends, and this is where she chose to be." Victor studied his son's face. "It won't be easy," he warned. "The work is hard, the conditions challenging." "I know," Richard acknowledged, "but we'd like to try." The next 2 weeks brought gradual change to Calderon House. Diana, Peter, and Richard returned to their lives temporarily, but came back on weekends, bringing supplies, tools, and a newfound commitment to the restoration. Diana, with her medical training, organized the basement infirmary properly, cataloging medications and updating supplies. Peter, who had always been mechanically inclined, tackled the mansion's ancient plumbing and electrical systems. Richard applied his financial expertise to creating a sustainable plan for the property's ongoing needs. Victor remained withdrawn, but each day he managed a little more engagement, a little more presence. He began working again on small repairs, though he often stopped midway through a task, overcome by memories of sharing the work with Camilla. Mara watched this gradual reawakening with quiet attention. She had withdrawn somewhat since the children's return, uncertain of her place in this reconstituted family. One evening, while Victor sat alone by the fire after the others had gone to bed, she approached cautiously. "I've been thinking of moving back to the cottage," she said. "Your family is here now. You don't need—" "Stop," Victor interrupted. "This isn't about need, Mara. It never was." She stood awkwardly. "Your kids don't want some random teenager hanging around." "My kids don't make the decisions here," Victor replied. "I do. And Camilla would haunt me for the rest of my days if I let you go back to that cottage alone." A ghost of a smile crossed Mara's face. "She probably would." "Sit, please." "Dominic's film said the house passes to those deemed worthy," Victor said after a moment. "I believe that includes you, Mara. You were here before us. You might be here after. The mansion chose you just as it chose us." "That sounds crazy," Mara pointed out. "I'd have thought so too once. Before the gates opened at our approach. Before the embers waited, burning for our arrival. Before Coda led us to the oxygen when Camilla needed it." He shook his head slowly. "I can't explain it all. I'm not sure I want to, but I know that you belong here as much as anyone." Mara blinked rapidly, looking away. "I'm not family, aren't you?" Victor challenged. Camilla thought so. She saw in you what she'd always hoped to see in her own children, not just intelligence or capability, but heart, compassion, the willingness to care for what matters, not just what profits. When Mara didn't respond, Victor continued, his voice stronger now, more certain. "Family isn't just blood, Mara. It's a choice. It's who stays when the world turns cold." Dominic knew that. Camilla knew it. "I'm beginning to understand it too. I miss her," she admitted. "So do I," he replied, his own eyes filling. The following Saturday brought all three Marsh children back to the mansion, this time with additional supplies and a more coordinated plan for continued restoration. To everyone's surprise, Peter's wife Jennifer accompanied them, along with their 10-year-old son Tyler. "I wanted to see the place Mom chose," Jennifer explained, "and Tyler's been begging to meet Coda ever since Peter told him about the mansion dog." The boy approached Coda cautiously under Mara's supervision. The German shepherd, gray around the muzzle but still dignified, submitted to the child's eager petting with patient tolerance. "He's the best dog ever," Tyler announced. "Does he know any tricks?" "Not tricks, exactly, but he knows things. Important things." "Like what?" Tyler asked, genuinely curious. "Like which rooms are safe and which aren't," Mara explained. "Which people need protection, where things are hidden." Tyler's eyes widened. "Can he find treasure? Is there treasure here?" Mara smiled. "There might be. Want to explore?" The pair disappeared with Coda, the boy's excited chatter fading down the hallway. Jennifer watched them go, then turned to Victor. "Peter told me everything," she said, "about what they did, the assisted living plan. I want you to know I had no idea until after you disappeared. I would never have supported it." Victor nodded. "It's in the past now. That girl, Mara, she seems to have been good for you and Camilla." "She has been," Victor confirmed. "She knows this house better than any of us. She's teaching us as much as we're teaching her. She's very young to be on her own. We're working on making that less true." Throughout the day, the expanded group worked together on various projects, clearing debris from the West Wing, cataloging artwork discovered in a long-closed storage room, replacing broken window panes with new glass Richard had brought from the city. Victor found himself moving between groups, offering guidance here, assistance there. The fog of grief still surrounded him, but now it was interspersed with moments of purpose, even occasional satisfaction at progress made. Late in the afternoon, he came upon Mara and Tyler in the hidden basement room they'd discovered weeks earlier. The boy was enthralled by the maps on the walls and the antique communication equipment, creating an elaborate fantasy about spies and secret missions. "This was a headquarters for superheroes, wasn't it?" he asked Mara. "Something like that," she replied. "People who protected others. Like Grandpa in the war?" Tyler asked. Victor, who had been observing from the doorway, felt something shift inside him at the boy's words. Grandpa. Camilla had been grandma to their grandchildren, but he had always been Victor or Mr. Marsh, respected but distantly, never with the warmth. Now, in this strange mansion that had become their sanctuary, his grandson spoke the title naturally, without prompting. "Yes," Victor said, "like that, but different too. Would you like to hear about it?" Tyler nodded eagerly, and Victor found himself telling a carefully edited version of Dominic Calderon's story. The friendship formed in war, the promise kept decades later, the house that waited for those who needed shelter. As he spoke, Victor realized he was doing something Camilla had always done effortlessly, building a bridge between generations, creating continuity through shared stories. That evening, gathered around the dining table for the first time since Camilla's death, the expanded household shared a meal prepared collectively: Diana's roast chicken, Peter's garlic bread, Mara's vegetable soup, and a cake Jennifer had brought from the city. When Richard raised a glass in Camilla's memory, Victor found himself able to smile through the tears. "To Camilla," he said, lifting his own glass. "To Grandma," Tyler added solemnly, raising his cup of milk. Later, after the others had retired to their assigned bedrooms, the mansion now able to accommodate them all in varying degrees of comfort, Victor stood alone on the veranda, wrapped in his heavy coat against the February chill. The night was clear, stars brilliant in the mountain sky, the snow-covered landscape transformed to silver in the moonlight. He became aware of Mara's presence before she spoke. She joined him at the railing, bundled in her oversized coat, breath visible in the frigid air. "They're different than I expected," she admitted. "Your kids. Grief changes people, sometimes for the better. Are they going to stay? Move in permanently?" "No," Victor replied. "They have their lives, their careers, but they'll visit, help when they can." He glanced at her. "Does that reassure you or disappoint you?" Mara considered the question honestly. Both, maybe. It's nice seeing you with your family, but also, it's been just us for a while now. Victor finished for her. You, me, and Coda, our little band of strays. A smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. Something like that. Another comfortable silence fell between them, the kind that had become natural in their shared grief and gradual healing. I finished something today, Mara finally said. While everyone was working on the West Wing, I wanted to show you, but not with everyone around. She reached into her coat pocket and withdrew a small object wrapped in cloth. Carefully, she placed it in Victor's palm and unwrapped it, revealing a bronze plaque, no larger than a playing card, professionally engraved with the simple words, "You kept us warm. E. Mara, this is." "How did you?" "Richard took me to town last weekend while you were resting," she explained. "There's a jeweler there who does engraving. I used some of the money Maria left." She trailed off, suddenly uncertain. "I thought maybe, for that stone bench by the woods, the one she sketched so often." Victor couldn't speak. The thoughtfulness of the gesture, the perfect capturing of Camilla's essence in those few words, overwhelmed him. Mara shifted awkwardly. "If it's not right, or if you'd rather." Victor pulled her into a hug, the first time he had initiated such contact. After a startled moment, Mara returned it, her thin arms strong around his waist. "It's perfect," he finally managed. When they separated, both pretended not to notice the other, wiping away tears. Together, they turned back to the moonlit landscape, the mansion solid and protective behind them. The next morning it dawned clear and bright, sunlight reflecting off the snow with blinding brilliance. After breakfast, Victor asked Mara to accompany him on a walk to the stone bench at the edge of the woods, Camilla's favorite spot. They trudged through snow that had begun to soften with the promise of eventual thaw. Coda bounded ahead, still spry despite his years, breaking a path for them through deeper drifts. When they reached the bench, Victor brushed away accumulated snow, revealing the weathered granite seat. Together, they mounted Mara's plaque on the back of the bench, Victor's steady hands guiding the screws into pre-drilled holes. When it was secure, they stepped back to view it, the simple tribute catching sunlight, the words a promise kept. "She would have painted this day," Victor said, gazing back toward the mansion, which stood majestic against the backdrop of mountains and forest. Mara nodded, seeing it through an artist's eyes as Camilla had taught her. "The shadows are important too," she said softly. "They give the light meaning." Victor settled onto the bench, feeling the cold stone through his layers, but not minding it. Coda came to rest beside him, a warm presence against his leg. Mara remained standing, her gaze moving between the mansion and the distant horizon where mountains met sky. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we keep going. We restore what can be restored. We rebuild what needs rebuilding. We make this place what Camilla saw it could be, not just a house, but a home, a sanctuary." "For us?" Mara asked. "For us," Victor confirmed. "And perhaps someday for others who need what we need. A place to belong when the world has turned cold." A breeze stirred through the trees then, carrying the faint scent of earth beginning to wake beneath the snow. In the reflection of the mansion's windows, for just a moment, Victor thought he glimpsed Camilla's smile, not in grief, but in approval, in continuity, in the warmth that outlasts winter. He smiled in return, not at a ghost or a fancy, but at the future taking shape before them, a future Camilla had envisioned even as her own time grew short. "Ready to head back?" he asked Mara. She nodded, her eyes clearer than they had been in weeks, the permanent furrow between her brows momentarily smooth. Together, they turned toward the mansion, their mansion now, gleaming in the winter sun like a promise kept, like a story still unfolding.